You do not join a doomsday cult because someone says, "Come lose your freedom." You join because someone says, "You are special, the world is broken, and only we understand what is coming." At first, you are lonely, stressed, confused, or grieving, and the group sees that before you even say it, because high control groups often look for people going through pain, change, or uncertainty. You walk into a room expecting strange people, but instead you get smiles, warm voices, attention, and praise. And suddenly it feels like these strangers understand you better than your own friends do. This first rank is the seeker, even if nobody says that word out loud, because at this stage you are not fully inside yet. You are being studied to see what you need most. They tell you the world is corrupt, shallow, blind, and close to collapse, and instead of making you feel afraid, that message strangely makes you feel calm, because now your fear has an explanation. The group treats your doubts like proof that you are intelligent, not resistant, and that is powerful, because your private anxiety starts to feel like a sign that you can see hidden truth. Soon you become the novice, or the initiate, and this is where the language starts to change. At first it was about healing, truth, discipline, and awakening. Now it becomes obedience and urgency. You hear more about the coming collapse. Outsiders are not just confused anymore. They are dangerous, asleep, corrupted, or too weak to survive what is coming when the world finally breaks. Then the group asks you to share personal secrets. They call it honesty, cleansing, or confession, but what you are really giving them is leverage, because you reveal shame, trauma, family wounds, and fear. Every painful story you tell makes you feel more open and more connected, but it also makes leaving harder later, because now the group holds details you once hid from everyone else. They slowly reduce your outside world. Less media, less privacy, less sleep, less time alone, fewer outside friends. None of it feels like force at first, because each step is framed as purification. Now you become a committed member, and that is the moment your identity begins to change. You do not just attend meetings anymore. You start building your whole self around the prophecy. The group teaches an us versus them story so often that it becomes your new map of reality. Inside means truth, safety, purity, and survival. Outside means lies, danger, weakness, and spiritual death. This is where thought reform works best. Language is controlled, doubts are renamed as moral failure, obedience is praised as strength, and fear is sold back to you as revelation. Because the end is always near, normal limits start to bend. Giving up money looks noble, cutting off family looks necessary. Working without rest looks faithful. Panic itself becomes proof that the threat is real. Soon you rise again, not because you are free, but because you are useful. This is the worker stage, sometimes called cadre, where loyalty becomes labor and labor becomes rank. Now you recruit new people, help collect funds, manage schedules, repeat teachings, and show the next group of seekers the same warm attention that once pulled you in. Rank feels exciting here because secrets are used like rewards. Leaders give you little bits of inner teaching, private meetings, or special tasks, and that makes obedience feel like growth and trust. But the real test is darker. The group wants to know whether you will obey the system even when your conscience says something is wrong, unfair, or deeply cruel. If you pass that test, you may become an enforcer, and that is where the trap tightens. You do not only follow rules now, you help make others follow them too. You watch weaker members, report disobedience, shame doubters, and sometimes help punish people who break group rules, even when the punishment is emotional instead of physical. Punishment can mean public humiliation, forced confession, loss of status, social freezing, extra labor, food restriction, sleep restriction, or warnings that spiritual destruction is close if someone rebels. When a frightened member says, "I am tired," leadership may call it ego. When someone says, "Full manipulated," leadership may call it impurity, betrayal, or even demonic influence. That is one of the most dangerous changes in cult life. Victims do not only suffer control, they become tools of the same control, repeating the pressure that once trapped them. Then comes the inner circle, and many people think this is where truth breaks the spell. Sometimes the opposite happens, because now you see things that should make you leave, yet often do not. You notice failed prophecies being reworded instead of admitted. You see money handled in hypocritical ways. You see favoritism, sexual abuse, private luxury, or rules that apply only to lower members. Still, leaving can feel impossible, because by now you have sacrificed years, relationships, money, and identity, and the cost of admitting you were deceived feels almost too painful to bear. This is where sunk cost thinking becomes a prison. The more you gave, the harder it becomes to say the whole thing was false, because that would shatter the world you built. In doomsday groups, failed predictions often do not end belief. Leaders may say the date was symbolic, the warning was spiritual, or the disaster was delayed because the group's faith saved the world. Each failed prophecy can actually deepen loyalty, because members are told their devotion changed history, and that turns disappointment into proof that the group remains chosen and necessary. At the top sits the leader, or maybe a chosen successor, and the whole system points upward toward that one figure who claims special revelation, unique purity, or secret understanding. The leader may say only they can read divine signs, identify hidden enemies, or guide the faithful through the coming catastrophe, and every rank below them exists to feed that dependency. The structure is not mainly about efficiency, it is about access. The leader controls access to truth, forgiveness, status, intimacy, and survival itself, which makes obedience feel like life support. Doomsday belief is especially dangerous because it can justify almost anything. If the end is near, then family bonds can be broken, savings can be surrendered, and violence can be excused. Modern history shows this pattern again and again in notorious groups, where worship of the leader, isolation, weaponized teachings, sexual exploitation, money extraction, and mass death became possible inside closed worlds. From the inside, rising through these ranks does not feel like walking into madness. It feels like becoming more certain, more pure, more awake, and more necessary to a great mission. That is why doomsday cults are so dangerous. They do not only force people to obey, they reshape meaning, memory, language, and identity until obedience starts to feel exactly like truth. If you ever meet a group that offers total certainty, demands secret confessions, isolates you from loved ones, and says disaster is near unless you obey, the danger is already very close. And if you want to understand how ordinary people can slide into extreme systems without seeing the trap, watch the next psychology story, because that process often begins with needs that look completely human.